Evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. I would like to announce that the meeting is being recorded. May I have a roll call?
Director Aguilar,
Here.
Topliff,
Here.
Brandt,
Here.
Freeman,
Here.
Craig,
Here.
Schultz,
Here.
Director Deschers out today.
Thank you. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Anaskoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. Are there any motions or?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have the motion by Topliff and the second by Brandt. Is there any public comment on this motion? I see none, so I'll go to a vote. All those who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 6-0-0-1. Now we're going to move on to the public comment period. Is there any public comment at this time?
Not on Zoom.
All right. Now we'll move on to our discussion and action items. We have item 4.1, the Ivy Safe Fall Meeting Report out.
Well, what I'll say is we had a really successful vending machine ribbon cutting 30 minutes before Ivy Safe. Lots of members of the press and community leaders showed up to that. We got good coverage for it. We saw some students use it the next day to demonstrate. So that was a really good outcome and lots of new ideas. You know, we had a discussion then about how other people can work with us on the vending machine moving forward. So I think there was already one idea that was brought up in Ivy Safe that we had never thought of, but would fit right in. So that was really a big success for us. And yeah, Sydney worked really hard to get the vending machine ready to work that day. There's a lot involved. There's more involved than we thought, I think. But it's good. I mean, very well reviewed, lots of good words on it from lots of different people. And then we presented the mobility and parking plans. That went really well. We presented those to lots of different groups. So some of the people in Ivy Safe heard that presentation 3 times that week. But we've gotten nothing but good questions and comments. Because a lot of people have been involved in this for so long. So lots of good discussion on that. And then there's a little bit of discussion about Halloween. There's not much going on in the first place, so there wasn't a lot of discussion, but AS shared what they're doing, Patrol shared what they're doing, you know, some upstaffing, but nothing out of the ordinary from like just a regular busy weekend. And the ordinance we learned starts Saturday, not Friday of this weekend before Halloween. So we did talk about getting together before December to start planning for Deltopia. That was something we had said we should do, and we're doing that. Then the cliff safety discussion was bumped because the county planning staff were not able to come, and we also had already bumped the peer-to-peer program. And 2 of the things that came up as things to work on out of Ivy Safe, one was AS wants to do a presentation on blue light phones and proposal on that, and that'll take lots of different agencies. It's not straightforward. You know, you have the police, fire, call center, parks district, lots of different players involved. This is something we're going to do now, but it came up as Ivy Safe is like an emerging issue. There's lots of burglaries this fall. And so we're going to be working on revamping the Lock Your Doors campaign from 2011, which was already done and launched back then. I think they bought 82,000 stickers about locking your doors back then. I don't know if we'll do that, but we'll do something similar to what they did back then. And it was successful back then, so we're going to just replicate it. We also are going to talk about at our future Ivy Safe meeting, probably the April one, is this was brought up by Stessa, is the Raise the Bar initiative. And I believe this is about a law that passed recently on how bars can help keep people safe from assault and tampering with drinks. So that's another thing that and I think Alcohol and Other Drugs Program is working on that as well. So that'll be another project through IVC.
All right, thank you. Dr. Freeman.
Yeah, on the lock your doors thing. So when I would go around for various things, putting door hangers on doors, both because I don't like the sun and because I tend to be awake at night, I'll go around middle of the night putting door hangers on doors. And I was amazed how many people would just have their door open and like there's no one there. It's like door hangers, go away. Some doors don't even have doorknobs. They can't even lock their door.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to
Yeah, I'm similarly surprised that there was a intensive 2011 Lock Your Doors campaign. My undergraduate memory does not remember locked doors anywhere. But I'm glad that people are interested about that. That's good. I was gonna ask if you could explain a little bit more just what the concept of blue light phones is.
It's like the emergency lights that are on campus, but trying to get them in Isla Vista is what they like to see.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
We can like click a button and the police come. But there's, there's a lot to discuss on these because there's benefits and cons. Like, if you click it, you're kind of stuck there to get the police response. Like they can only know that one location.
Got it. Dr. Brand?
Yeah, maybe a good thing for that discussion would also be an overview of how the technology has changed in terms of 911
Yeah.
and its ability to track you by cell phone and posing the question to law enforcement of what do you recommend you do if you are in an active safety emergency issue.
Yeah.
And I say that because I've been in touch with a couple of people that have been in some like not so safe situations where they've had it come across their minds of like almost doubting themselves, whether it rises to the occasion of whether or not they should call 911 or thinking, is there another number to call? And so I think, maybe just a discussion about what to do in a situation like that, education wise might be helpful. And I got my laptop stolen because we didn't lock our doors in 2015. So like any campaign, we gotta.
That did happen to me in 2011. Actually, spent all of my summer's paychecks on a new laptop. That's definitely a common thing for Isla Vistans. Are there any other questions at this time? Is there any public comment on this item? Is there any further board commentary or questions on this item? Dr. Brandt?
I just wanted to say thank you to Ellen and Olivia, who have been our representatives on IVC for the whole part of this year. And we're going to get probably a lot of time to thank you and sing your praises as we get closer to the end of the year. But I think in this area in particular, it's been really important that we've had student voices in that room to be able to speak to the lived experience that people have in the community. So it was super fun to get to pop back in for the ribbon cutting and see you in action. So
it's been a really cool opportunity to be on IVC. It feels like you're in a really important people.
That's a good description.
Yeah, and I think that you're right. Like it has been nice to have a voice in that space, and I do feel like being there as a representative on the board means that we're taken more seriously, which is nice, especially when it's like our meeting.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And now we can move on to item 4.2, the appointment process policy and test run of the appointment process.
I'll turn it over to our Director Freeman, who's been working on this, chair of our policy committee.
So I can't remember if all of you were here for the time when we were trying to do an appointment a year and a half ago. Is that the case? No, you were not. Okay, you were not.
She was
But Ella was in the
You were
room.
there.
You
were very there.
Okay, but Carrie was not. Okay, so one of the thoughts that I've often had when coming in and being on a board and having the board having to make an appointment of whether it be an appointment to the president, vice president type position, or an appointment of a member of the public to sit on the board, is the idea that the normal process it to me feels a bit awkward. And I tend to describe the normal process as going somewhat as follows, which is that there are a number of candidates. They will maybe, they'll explain why maybe they should be selected. There'll be some token discussion at the board, but then somebody will point out, all right, I think our decision today is clear. I make a motion to appoint so-and-so to the position of whatever it is. And at that point, the agenda is set in the sense that we're now going to vote on that decision. And there might be there might be a sufficient number of people who think that that's an okay decision, but there might be more people in total who might think that another decision would be a better decision. And so it causes to me this kind of impulse where you want to be the person to make the motion to cause the process to occur in a certain order. To take an extreme version of this, there's actually a voting process you can imagine. It's actually named for it, called sequential voting, where you take all the candidates, put them in some order. Maybe it's random, maybe alphabetize them, maybe there's some external criteria by which you rank them, and then you would vote on each one of them in order. And you can imagine a situation like while thinking about that, where if you're sitting on the board, you're deciding, well, I mean, I prefer the candidate that's coming after this candidate, but am I going to right now vote no in order to get to the ability to vote on the next person? That could be weird. I'm not entirely certain of what the feelings are as far as like how that's going to work. And so it just causes a bunch of like confusion. Now, I think actually motion voting is maybe superior to that because it gives an opportunity to have the people who are on the board have some discussion to get some kind of feeling in order to get a direction of the person I'm thinking of is they're not really getting support. So, I shouldn't say anything. I'll let somebody else make a motion and kind of go towards something. So with that as a backdrop, I had thought going into the meeting that we had a year and a half ago, well, there are people who talk about this thing called ranked choice voting, sometimes called instant runoff voting. And okay, what if we use instant runoff voting to try to do an appointment? And I thought about that, and I before the meeting, and I talked to I think I talked to Jonathan, and at the time Marcos was the chair, and there were some feelings, oh, this could be an interesting thing to try. And so, but we need to have a process for it going into the meeting. And so I wrote down a process. But as I did that, I started to realize that, like, okay, well, when you do instant runoff voting, that's where you rank all the candidates and you put your rankings down on the ballot. And then there's an algorithm that is used in order to figure out which candidate is not getting support, and they get eliminated, and then the votes that were eliminated get redistributed to the other people based upon the rankings. And I looked at that and I started to think, well, there must be some kind of simplification to this because we're all here. Like, we don't have to have an algorithm do it. And I haphazardly simplified it going into that meeting. And so using this is a kind of process in computer science things. We talk about an offline algorithm where you have to have all the information up front, and then all the people who generated the information or all the computers, the software could all leave. And then there's a program that can run on the information and come up with an answer. Or an online process where the participants have to remain available, and as the algorithm executes, it can prompt for more information. And I tried to do such a transform on the instant runoff algorithm, and I didn't think through some of the corner cases. And so we came into the meeting, and one of the things that happened is that after one, well, first of all, the process was something where there was a little bit of like pressure on behalf of us. We're running the process to try to have it happen and try to make it quick. And so simplifications were even being done by me during the meeting, which were maybe not so great thing to be doing. Another issue is that there was like pressure put upon people to make the ranking decisions up front, going into the actual decision making process at one point. That started to put a lot of pressure on people. But also there was like a point in the meeting also where when we tried to start running part of that algorithm, just like as you might try to do it, we just ended up immediately coming back to a tie, and that because of the algorithm was like weirdly incorrectly specified by me in a way that did not actually handle that situation. And so by the end of it, it was very confusing, and there was a complaint from somebody on the board. I will say it was Spencer. I think it was a very correct complaint, which is that these processes are very confusing and lack transparency. And by the end of it, we were putting things into a spreadsheet where we didn't even know how the spreadsheet was implemented in order to see what the outcome would be. And that is where it just kind of got left as maybe this is just a wrong thing to try to do at this level. And recently I came back to thinking about it, and we now live in an interesting new future where if you have a complicated question that you want to ask the world, you can ask it in a way where you don't have to really know the terminology you're trying to utilize in order to ask the question. And an AI will try to figure out, will try to summarize an answer for you. And the question that I had is, has anyone else attempted to simplify instant runoff for this usage and come up with something where you have a more online participatory process that fixes some of these problems? And it was like, oh, you're talking about something that totally exists. It's called exhaustive ballot. And there's a Wikipedia article. And when you look at the Wikipedia article, you see that a number of governments use it. And when you look at the governments that use it, the reason they use it is for this exact scenario, which is you have a small board of people who are attempting to make a decision for something like the Speaker of the House. And that's important because one of the things, like some of the default assumptions when you go into something like instant runoff voting is that you're gonna have a very large number of voters, that statistically you're gonna end up in a scenario where it's very unlikely you're gonna get an exact tie. This exact tie is almost never gonna come out that you've got, you might, but like then like the way in which you deal with the ties is a little bit more flexible. And so exhaustive ballot, I think, solves some of the problems. And by the so then I then like wrote up again like the procedure, and then I looked into what you like some of the corner cases we just need to satisfy, and I put together like a draft policy for it, send it off to Jonathan to get put on the policy committee agenda. It was after that point that I went and I was like, you know what, I should go read what some of these other governments say about it. And one of the things I put in the policy is some flavor text that said that the goal was to have a process that was easy, fair, and transparent. And I ended up reading through the one from the UK Parliament, and the UK Parliament, I was fascinated to see that the text that they had come up with describing the scenario with themselves, the ERS set out 4 criteria for assessing the fairness of a speakership electoral system. 1, the winning candidate should have the support of more than 50% of those voting. That's just mechanical properties, these sorts of things. Members should be able to vote for the candidate of their choice without fear of their vote being wasted. All candidates should be treated equally. So that's where I was thinking of fair. The procedure should be transparent and efficient. And I was like, oh, easy, transparent, and fair. That is exactly the things that they decided that this exhaustive ballot process was designed to do. And so it's very similar to the thought process of the super high level description of instant runoff voting, because it kind of is. It's an interactive version of instant runoff voting. And so, but by having written out the process and making certain that at each round of the process, everyone kind of commits to the person they're putting down, and also trying to put into the policy some information about like corner cases that can come up, such as like whether you are allowed to and to what extent change your vote between rounds and things like that. Who's tried to make it more clear. So the process at its highest level here is that we have a set of nominees, and the nominees are selected by whatever input process is to the appointment system. So like in the case of a appointment of members of the public to the board, we have a process, we have an existing policy for that, and we have an application process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And or in the case of something like selecting the president, the board would just come up with before like nominating myself. We have a list, and then every board member will state who they wish to have be appointed to the position, and then and much like in the case of a 2-round voting system, which is what we happen to use here in California for a lot of things, you might be familiar with it. If anyone gets a majority at that point in the system, at that point in the process, they win. Otherwise, one candidate one nominee is removed, and that nominee is the one who got the least number of votes. And there is a process that I specified for how a tie would end up occurring, which is that then the board would attempt to vote on the tie. And if they cannot come to a decision, it will be the discretion of the chair. And I wrote it that way because in many cases, I think that it's something where there will be an obvious, simple way of continuing the process. But in the case where it can seem complicated, it's a discretion, they can make it random. And that can be considered something to be very fair there. And then we go back into the rounds. And when we get down to a point where there are two participants, then the board has to just argue it out. Because what I didn't want to have happen is a situation where everyone plugs a bunch of numbers into the spreadsheet and the spreadsheet determines who the appointment is. And so, and I think that by making it so that if people are then going to then make the decision, at some point, like if you're 6 people on the board, because we have one vacancy and we're having to appoint somebody, it's up to those 6 people to decide what's going to happen. Not even if you could argue that the algorithm is deciding the wins of the 6 people, the people on the board nor the people in the public will understand exactly why that ended up happening the way that it ended up happening. So it should be up to them. And then at the end of the process, the board ratifies the decision that was made by the process, and so that it is compatible with the normal systems of recording actions taken by the board.
Well, I did remember I was there last time.
Oh, you were there. Oh, I'm
As soon
so
as you
glad.
talked about how awkward it was. And all
Oh, it's
that.
fun. It's fun. Okay, there you go. It was funny. It's funny that entire spiel. I was like, okay, so my audience is like a little bit more caring than anyone else. It turns out.
But I still enjoyed it. It was like PTSD.
And come to think of it, because I forced myself to relive that meeting last week
just did
before a
too.
policy committee meeting, rewatching it to try to make certain I understood what happened and where there was both, whether it be awkwardness or process failure or a concern, and trying to figure out how to address those in various levels of this discussion. So.
An important thing to remember that if you were there, Carrier, you were there. Important thing to remember is that we had an even number of selectors with a mathematical tool. Of course, we came to an even number of difficulties. Then we tried to troubleshoot on the fly and it became difficult. One of the things I wanted to share from a policy committee perspective is that we wanted to talk about this in a regular meeting like this. So it is in a meeting where more folks can look at it on YouTube. And we also wanted there to be a practice trial run of this process. That way everyone understands the nuts and bolts, similarly to when people start a new board game. We can read the instructions and all that, but it can also be a lot more clear learning to wrestle with the tool and to wrestle with the board game. And so we wanted to make this agenda item a part of the transparency, the ease, and the fairness, which is just to participate in it with non-consequential choices.
I guess I'll also add that the end part of that with respect to once you get down to 2 candidates, it's the prerogative of the board to figure out who it is. Essentially affirms the way that we did it last time, which was we got down to a tie, and then it was okay, the process is confusing. It's our job to figure this out, and we made a decision. And so the process that is specified here is effectively compatible with the way that we attempted as a group to debug the system last time and come to a conclusion and led to someone on the board. So.
Are there any questions for policy committee or Director Freeman at this time?
I'd like to ask about the word canonical that appears in this policy. Is that there
it's
for
possible I
legal-
misspelled it, or it's possible it's the word canonical.
Whatever, is that legally required?
I
Because
should have it
it
in front of me.
seems
Can you point it
obfuscating
out
to me.
Can you point out to me where it was located?
The 3rd paragraph.
Does that need to be in there?
Oh, yeah, so what the word means is, and actually you might have come across it in terms of something like, if there's like a body of fiction or like there's a bunch of like Lord of the Rings or Marvel movies or whatever, there's like official content and there's unofficial content. And so people will talk about what's canon and what's not canon. And so that's where, but that same word, you can talk about the canonical, and it's not just like it is, yeah, it's a mathematical term also, like but like just to
Can
try to
we just
explain.
say
Yeah,
complete
whatever.
list?
Great, yeah, sure. I'm not-
even covered to
there's
me.
certain words that I'm very used to using because of the particular nerdy geeky things that I do, and I happen to leak into some of my writing. And I'm not attached to any of them.
Okay,
We can make that change. Director Bray.
I had a question about that section as well, the third paragraph. I have thoughts on what you described, but I'll hold those because I'm reading this as the board members on the dais, as a part of their discussion, could come up with a name that wasn't submitted during the public application process. In the second sentence. And that worries me because I think the number one thing that we need to spell out in this policy first and foremost is what is the application process? What are you required to submit? You know, if a member of the public goes and sees this on our website, you know, this isn't like a normal job posting. So we should at least try to spell out in the policy what we should put in the quote unquote job policy, you know, because I would be worried about a scenario where a board of well, six, I guess it would be six at the most people, just comes up with a random name and says, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna nominate Mickey Mouse along with all the other people that apply. But I don't think you were trying to do that. Maybe
To be clear, the existing policy for the application process to the board highly details the timelines and process by which people come to be on that nomination list. And so what I was attempting to do here, maybe I failed, is to reference that this policy is merely about how to make a decision among a set of nominees that was selected by another process, such as potentially the one for applications to the board.
okay.
So I think we could alter the sentence or make an additional sentence that just points to like that numbered policy, correct?
Yeah, for sure, it can be incorporated in the other.
Because I know that part of Director Freeman's goal was that this current page, the appointment process policy, applied to not just like applications to join the board, but for creating like chair, vice chair, et cetera, type of nominees that exist within the board. So that's my memory of why you made that sentence have an or and be more open-ended.
Yes.
But I think that we could be more detailed in that paragraph and just like enumerate, like in this application or in this particular step, we would create the list from this application process. And in this particular appointment process, it comes from members of the board only, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and so instead of, for example, saying this could come from discussion or might come from another process, it could be that if there is a policy which defines how such a list would be created, it shall be used. Otherwise, and you can specify for appointments to positions on the board, this would be selected by the board during discussion.
Director Brand?
I think like my general comments on this, appreciation for what you guys are trying to undertake. I think that you're reviewing what the way that the process happened last time, which I view as though it was awkward. I don't know if you're ever going to be able to take the awkwardness out of it. And I think we all spoke to that very clearly from the dais when we had that discussion about how weird it is to do a job interview with people and then like talk about them to their face right afterwards. And I'm gonna come to you because I'm really curious what your thoughts are from having to be on the other end of that.
PTSD.
But I am a little worried about the transparency, and I think I just need to wrap my head around it a little bit more. Because I mean, here, maybe this is a question for council if council is on, but
Jamie's on.
the only way that the board can act is by a majority vote. Is that correct?
It's an interesting question. So it doesn't always have to be a formal vote. It can be a general consensus of the board or any decision of the board to take any kind of action, but it does have to be by a majority. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a formal vote, but it does have to be a majority.
It has to be a majority. And so if you're in a situation where you're making an appointment and, you know, there's at most 6 directors, which in that case, you know, could potentially result in a tie, you still need 4 of the 6 to be in concurrence, whether it's via vote or some other way. Am I correct?
That would generally be correct, yes.
This algorithm only terminates in the case that there is a majority. If you get down to a tie of more than 2 people, somebody has to be removed. And if you have a tie of 2 people, the board must make a decision. And so at the end, there is a majority of people who are in support of one particular nominee. And then even more so, just to make it really like compatible with the normal structure, it was that then at the end of this, the board makes a normal motion and vote to decide, like to make the ratify the decision that was made, so that there's like a very clear, like, okay, and now we've decided, and this is what we decided. Now we're all going to make certain that we all agree, potentially even somebody who didn't want that to be the correct candidate, we all agree that this is the person, which I also think is an interesting part, because there's often this kind of feeling that we have of like, well, it's kind of weird maybe if at the end of this whole thing, like, even though we kind of all agree this process, you had to, like, you know, I vote no on this person. I don't, you know, this is like, this is what the board wants, is what's good for the board because the board made this decision. At the end of this process, we all even get to vote yes.
I'm looking at Jonathan because I think you were gonna.
We do have a policy of how the board takes action that would need to be incorporated in this, and it says you can take action through motion, resolution, ordinance. So you just added that. Okay. Yes, Rachel.
I really like this because I think it just writes out what happened the last time, except it's like written out. I'm not gonna lie, it was quite stressful to watch you guys figure out the process while I sat in the audience, just waiting. Yes, that was stressful. That was what I signed up for, and that's fine. But I think this would definitely remove an element of stress to know how it would be done, like exactly, and the exact process, and like an actual like quantification of what is going on. I really like. So I guess that answers your question on what I have to say about it. I really do like this because I do remember you guys were up here. I very distinctly remember you trying to do math, like trying to do spreadsheet math with ranked choice, and nobody else was quite following the math, including myself. I do like this a lot.
That's fun.
There's a moment where I was doing ad hoc simplification of like, so does anyone have so-and-so as a second choice? Okay, no, that means we can skip the following thing and just go straight to.
You were like making calls, and I was like, where are you pulling these numbers from? It's like I'm so stressed out, and he's pulling numbers. I don't know where they're coming from, but now I know where they're coming from.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a good perspective, and I like. The other thing that I think about, maybe Jonathan will remember this, I remember we watched this happening together because this is 2018, the Santa Barbara City Council appointment for District 6.
Oh, yeah.
We were in the office about to come into an IVCSD board meeting, watching their appointment. Because I think that's probably, that to me is like, it's got all the cues of like the really tough stuff that we probably would, you know, want to avoid in terms of hurting people's feelings. They did not get to they got to a majority vote. They did not get to a unanimous vote on the person. And And ultimately, I mean, you had two groups of three that were pretty dug in their positions, and what had to happen was that one person had to compromise and go over to the other side because you're tied at 3-3, right? So I guess this is just more a comment general about how we approach this, and it will be even more important because if the situation does come up, it's likely to come up when we have a very new board. That there isn't going to be a way for us to do this without compromising with one another. There's not a special algorithm that's going to figure out how we do this and how everyone's needs get met. Like, it's going to be messy. We should embrace the messiness as much as we can because we're all human. And I think that for as tricky as it was last time, I did kind of like that we were all able to say these are out of the, I think was it 7 applicants or 7 interviews that we did, or did we do 8? Out of the 7 people, these are the 3 that we think are that each of us thought were the best. So we all got a little bit of an idea, and people gave a little bit of an explanation, but nothing too in detail. And then we got to work on trying to persuade each other, which I do see that as driving with this.
To be clear, this doesn't have the part where we have to, before the thing, specify all 3. So even during that discussion, there was, as we were going around and asking, kind of like after the process almost, is like, who are your 3? There's one person who was like, I think I've already specified my 3. And I went back and rewatched the meeting multiple times, like, no, actually they didn't. And I can appreciate why, because it can be something where it's a little bit like ranking people that you weren't that keen on, or having to rank people that that like you were keen on, but like weren't gonna win the process. It starts to cause this feeling of like going on an extra limb politically. And I appreciate that's our job, but like, I was just like, if that's a friction towards getting people to actually wanting to do this, kind of remove it, but I mean, I liked it. I didn't mind it. I immediately had my 3. But this makes it so that like one of the thoughts here of this process is you only have to specify your number 1 unless your number 1 gets eliminated, and then you can keep changing your vote.
And so for the reason of like, I knew that there was going to still be questions no matter what on this. That's why I asked our staff if we could do a practice run. And my suggestion was that we try to do a practice run on like, what is the best ice cream flavor? And clearly there's like lots of options for that. It's not just, there's lots of options. It's not just like blue or red. It's like a whole gamut of possible options. And that's what we had with Isla Vistans coming in, trying to seek seat on our board. And so I felt like, you could really like mint chip, and that doesn't mean you don't like vanilla. It just means that you really like mint chocolate chip. And I was like, well, we need to like make this as difficult as possible in practice without humans and without like greater philosophy behind it.
I think one thing to maybe look at there is that we're doing with ice cream flavors. It's not necessarily that we're voting for our favorite ice cream, but we're voting for the ice cream that would all be chosen if we only get to have one flavor of ice cream at our ice cream party. And so then, because otherwise it starts to get feeling like, what does it mean for me to like, I mean, I told you my favorite ice cream is. Why am I changing my vote? Changing my vote because we still have to choose our one ice cream. So,
which ice cream is going to do the best job?
It's a group decision.
Not at the IVCSD 4th of July party. Are there any further questions from the board right now?
I mean, I think that, and I guess, there's nothing in this policy that says that the chair can't ask for this to happen, because everything is ultimately at the chair's discretion if it's not in our policies. But I do feel that the, kind of going through your top, it doesn't have to be 3, it could be top 2. And I guess it will probably depend on how many applicants we would have for a position. But I do feel that that is helpful, if just because it allows for just more discussion to happen before people feel like they need to like go on record with a vote. And I think that it helps us understand where each other are coming from a little bit more. Because the thing that just worries me a little bit about the process, I mean, I'm listening and I'm hearing the arguments for it, there are strengths, but it is, you know, there's a certain amount of rigidity to it. I guess you could make the argument that that's the same for having a nomination and a majority vote too, as you have done direct agreement.
But it's worth, I really like the idea of adding something explicit that says that like before we begin the voting process, each voting board member will provide a like a kind of a summary of their thoughts and at least perfunctory ranking of of how they would be going through the voting process. And that if you're okay with it like that, that kind of leaves it open to somebody who wants to say, well, you know, I'm going to do it in this order, or somebody who's just like, well, you know, I'm kind of leaning with these priorities, and that's why I'm looking at these candidates in this way. And some people might rank all of them, some people might rank only 2 of them. I don't know if that's okay with you, but it does provide like a floor for each person. If you actually really like the idea of forcing out the 2 or 3, I'm also okay with that. I was trying to help people not have to do that. Okay,
We
want to do it. Sounds great.
So when you say rank, though, you're just talking about for just
Discussion purposes, and
Discussion
then it would go into the voting process.
Yeah, like I think what we're all thinking right now is adding a step in that's like before the first round of voting board members should share like some commentary. They are allowed to share their ranking of candidates.
I was thinking we could make it even stronger, right? In the sense of like, we could actually say like each voting board member will summarize their thoughts on the candidate pool and provide some, and I use the word perfunctory because there's certain words that I gravitate towards. we can ask a thesaurus. For all I know, I'm using the word wrong anyway. But some perfunctory ranking of the candidates as they would as they're expecting to go through the voting process, and that makes a little bit because I feel like they're just saying that like they can. It's just like, okay, well, somebody's gonna be like, yeah, I opt out. It's like, I kind of want them to, you know, if we're going to do this, let's all just do it. And I definitely appreciate the care to the like the transparency that Spencer is pointing out here, and getting us to all like provide our brain state, and that was one of the things that even at the end of the last meeting, people were saying, this actually was actually kind of good. I wasn't certain going into this part, but like this part, but it was actually kind of nice, you know, getting all to have all this discussion. So yeah.
I felt good walking away from it. I thought it was good. I mean, it definitely, I mean, because, you know, and it's because I think that we ended up in a place where we had a lot of good applicants, and we found that we were kind of all in the same place of like, there were a couple that we all really liked, you know, and even the ones that maybe we had varying degrees of priorities for, like there were still opportunities for us to acknowledge those people. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like we you know, made the IVCSD any enemies that night, per se. Maybe some folks disappointed that they weren't the ones chosen, but that, you know, it's a mutually exclusive process, unfortunately. So,
Well, personally, I'm comfortable with that step being like a step like that being added into this policy. I don't know how other members of the policy committee feel. Part of the goal that we had also was that if we have this discussion today and we also play with the tool today, then it doesn't have to be voted on today. You all could like give us policy members some feedback if necessary, and then we can then make like a final approval before we get to the end of this year's calendar, in which like there'll be a new board beginning.
In case anyone heard that and got concerned, there is no tool.
Not tool, not tool. I'm just calling it a tool because I like the idea of there being a tool to help clarify people's sentiments. But yeah, it is not a tool.
Yeah, I almost feel like we all kind of need to do like our homework just on because ultimately I'm glad you put the term in here of exhaustive voting or exhaustive balloting, and how that works. Because I like the idea too of doing a test run. I also know that we're not going to have to, as this board, make an appointment before the end of the year. It's not, it won't be possible because we've only got one more meeting left as this board.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
Is there technically two?
December 3rd is the sports.
Oh, it's the 3rd. Okay. And
I
then
don't think it's as much a
Yeah.
practice
Yeah.
run so that we are familiar with it when we go into our first appointment as much as it is with the group of people who actually have been doing this sort of thing for a while. Let's see if the policy works. Let's see if there's words that we need to add to the policy in order to clear up situations in quarter cases.
And there happens to be 6 of us today instead of the usual 7, which could make it like, oh, it's over.
It's a very good point. I'd forgotten that when we go on the test run, we would have had an odd number, but thankfully, in some sense, we do not. Did you put thought into being the person running this, or was it expected that I would?
Oh, I didn't think I was gonna run it, but I
Okay.
could, if you want me to.
I almost feel
could
like that-
maintain the list.
I almost feel like, by the way, that might be better for what reason, which is that I wrote this thing and I have a concept in my head of what's going to happen, and I might do things that aren't obvious from the text, and we should only do things that are obvious from the text. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think,
it's like cheating if I do it.
Yeah.
We don't learn anything.
I mean, I
Or
think,
we don't learn as much.
I'm not like an expert on how to implement this yet, so maybe what we do is something like, we make the list, right? Like that's one of the points in here is you make the canonical list. So we make a list of 5 ice cream flavors, and then we do the rounds manually. Like we just do round 1, everybody picks their choice from that 5, see what the result is, and then manually do round 2. I think that's.
Oh, it is.
easiest way.
Maybe that was confusing, but no, this is definitely
That is
manual. There is
exactly
no intention that any of this is automated. There are no tools, there are no spreadsheets.
Okay.
It is merely that we all vote. If we all happen to vote chocolate in round 1, it's over.
It's over. Okay, so, I mean, I guess you guys need to have a discussion to make the list.
Yeah.
5 ice creams. I don't know if you want to do 5 seems.
Oh,
I don't
It's
care, I don't
possible.
care
Target
what
number.
5 they are.
Yeah.
It's possible there could be more though,
But I think it's
We'll
like
know, but you have to-
simulating
We're
the
trying
making a
to
list. I think that's
imitate
part of it. Is
how this
Yeah.
would
if
be.
you have a list of 10 ice cream flavors, you
So-
gotta cut it down to 5. So-
Would
You want me
you
to-
make the list of the original 7 for us and then we would rank the 7?
Sure, I'll make a list.
Okay.
right
I
now.
feel like for ice cream, what might have happened is that we were given a list by the vendor for the event of different ice cream flavors. We have to select one. For whatever reason, staff has said that this is a very important decision. It has been brought to the board. So now
Alright.
that's
I get it now.
Yeah.
Or- Making a list.
Because otherwise, yeah, it does with ice cream. It's very always do that. It's very unconstrained. With like president, I mean, there's
I could start talking about bubble gum, like
yeah.
blue bubble gum or whatever,
Really?
like how that's on offer.
If we're selecting president, there's only so many people who are sitting up here who could become the president. So there's and so worst case, we're just all on the list for the nominees for empty vacant seat. There's a process for that that's encoded in a different policy. So we shouldn't hopefully ever end up in a situation where we're sitting up here just first brainstorming for a long time to get a very large list that then we're going to have to spend a very large amount of time to do. So.
I don't know what to call these final lists, initial lists. It's good enough for now.
I understand what you're saying there, yes.
So here's the options, I guess, that we were given: chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, pecan, banana, coffee, lemon, caramel, mint chocolate chip, cookies, and cream. So that's who's applied. Or that's, the list we've got. So you would now want to say these are the 5 we want to judge. right? Or you'd cut it down to not just 5, any number, or eliminate some, I guess.
That's
Like,
my
no one's gonna-
understanding.
How does this part work?
We want to each go and say our top 3.
Yes. I'm with Spencer because I'm not, so my thought process here is based on what my understanding is. So I'm curious where you were coming, because I don't, again, like it's cheating if I direct it too hard
Yeah,
here.
well, I mean, I was
but-
thinking that, lots of people apply, right, for an appointment, but not necessarily everyone would want to be considered, or you wouldn't want to consider everybody.
Well, if everyone, I
Like
mean,
if they don't have a good like they don't have a complete application, right?
oh,
They didn't
no,
show up to the interview, or
we just don't vote for them.
you just take them out
We just
completely.
don't, yeah, we don't take them off because that would be us, like,
Okay.
yeah, so we
I
just-
understood that there's a point where you say, here's the list we want to use.
I
compared
see,
to
okay, yeah,
Here's the full list that there is.
yeah, okay.
So
Yeah, so the thing that I'm trying to do with that
That's right.
paragraph that we probably need to rewrite that, is that there's some, so in the case of like a process for appointing a vacant seat, there is a policy which specifies, how to get on that list of nominees. And that is the list of nominees.
okay.
For president, it would be, for example, people who are on the board are able to say, like, add themselves to the list.
Yeah.
For vice president, the same thing. For ice cream, if we were to use this for it, not that, like, I would think we would want to add, because we're not intending to use this for ice cream, but if we were, I would think it would be like staff brings us a decision to make. Yeah, and so, because the process of whittling it down was supposed to happen during the voting rounds. But I do appreciate,
Well,
apparently there's a lot of confusion about.
You're
where the
supposed to
list comes
accept the
from.
list, though. You're supposed to vote, I don't know if you vote on the list or everybody says, yes, that's the list, but that's what this says is a list will be accepted by the board. It could
Yeah,
come from
I only wrote
discussion.
that to solve 2 scenarios. One scenario is there's an appointment to a vacant seat and we have a process for that. And the other one is president, and there's like, I don't think like if I want to be president, I'm gonna raise my hand and I'm gonna say, I would like to be considered. And then I'm on the list. So that was what I was kind of going for that. So what do you think we need to say? I mean, if everyone's okay with that sort of thought.
I mean, it's true that a list needs to be agreed upon,
Yeah,
but how do you do that? Do you want to vote on this list? I guess that's what I'm thinking. How do you say this is the list and not a different list? Compared to I'm just going off what it says here. It says a list
Yeah.
will be accepted by the board. What does
the
will
word
be
accepted
accepted mean?
Yeah, I understand that. I was kind of going for like this consensus that we're gonna move to the voting process. But maybe there needs to be,
I mean, you could put by consensus in a comma by consensus. You can put comma by motion. You should maybe say how.
but we could also just specify it for the 2 cases, because again, like the 2 cases where it matters are like the intention of this to be used is appointments to seats and appointments
Yeah.
to vacant seats, or so appointments to positions and appointments to vacant seats. And appointments to positions, it could be that first, any candidate that wishes to be on the list, or anyone who wants to, I don't know if we want to be able to say like, I want Marcos to be on the list, whether he wants to be or not. That's what's like anyone who's willing to be on the list is on the list. And then for vacant seats, it's by the process, the application process.
Okay, so anyone who applies will be on this canonical complete
Yeah,
list.
definitely my intention, I don't know, I mean, people may disagree, but my intention was that the existing way we had it, where we have we have an application process, and then those people are the applicants, we go into the thing, that was to be the
Yeah.
list.
I think we should rewrite this then, because
Okay.
this makes it sound like it's a product
choice.
that's
Another
created.
step.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think I've also, I'm rereading this now and seeing that I skipped over this, but all of our discussion has been about appointment to a vacancy on the board where we, had to act down a human. And I had not, I guess, I had not viewed the word appointment as applying to other things other than appointments to a vacancy.
Yeah,
And I know that your intention, I think, is this applies for any sort of committee assignments, board leadership. And I don't know if I agree with it being used for that purpose, just because I think that the way that we want to divvy up committee assignments and then board leadership assignments is more based on things like workload and interest. and that involves some compromise and people talking about what they're interested in, rather than like this very rigid voting process. I wouldn't want to
And
box us
Yeah,
in
so-
for that.
So actually, I actually agree with you in that this had come up in my mind while at one point writing this. I hope no one's expecting, maybe they are expecting this to be used for the committees. I actually was not intending this to be used for committees. I was intending this to be used for president, but what I was kind of expecting to happen is that we would only have a nomination list of one and then we'd select it. This would only come up if we're in a situation where we have like two people that we kind of wanted to be, and then we were like three, and then we would have to make a decision. And so I was really looking at this as a way of appointing to the positions of president, vice president, secretary, and to vacant seats, not committees.
I thought Jonathan was secretary.
Yeah.
Oh,
You don't-
great, perfect, even easier. President and vice president and vacant seats.
That was my understanding, the way you explained it in policy committee.
Yeah, so we can look at the first paragraph where, which is, we scroll up a bit. Okay, this process is used to both appointing members of the public to vacant seat on the board, as well as to appoint existing members of the board to take on specific roles and positions such as the president. We could, if we don't want to use this for committees and we think that wording makes it sound like it's to be used for committees, we could very narrowly specify to specific members of the board to the positions of president and vice president, first of all, and then you could also decide maybe you don't want it to be for that either. But first of all, if we want to remove committees, does anyone want to be used for committees?
No.
Okay, so Jonathan, we just edit this. Are you able to?
We'll make that as later.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we first phase, let's edit and make it so that it's specific to president and vice president. Next question is that I would like it to be used for president and vice president. What are other people's thoughts on that? Because maybe that's who doesn't want that.
I don't think I'm quite there
Yeah.
yet, but I'm thinking.
After
So
the cookies and cream, you'll be there.
I understand it in a similar perspective as Director Freeman, which is that most of the time, this district's board will have one ideal president and vice president, like people they're gonna want. Or other board members haven't thought about it yet, but they're okay with it and they see like they're actually very happy with that. And so like a couple of people have thought about it and they think person X should be the next board president. And then the other people who haven't thought about it are like, oh, that's a great idea. I confidently agree that person X should be president. And so then there wouldn't need to be a vote. That's like the most likely situation with this particular district. I like having this possibly apply in case a future version of this district in which there's a camp of three that really wants one person Y to be president and another camp of three that really wants one person W to be president. And then there becomes like, okay, like there is a head-on matchup for differing values or whatever. And the board does that in what I think is a fair process, in what I think is a transparent process. So then the selection of who will be the board president is done publicly and through a manner of steps that the public and the board is familiar with. Yeah, that's my comments on it. Dr. Schultz.
In that case, it's 7 though. So that would be really, like, that would be a very clear, like, process for a tiebreaker vote too.
It's true.
Like, I don't see a situation where that would happen, but at that point we'd have 7 anyway. So you'd be able to get that majority,
Yes, you're right about
which
that.
is a very, like, this is very clear.
It's possible it can be 6 people when you have the president vote, especially if we're moving that to January. Like we've been saying we're gonna do. And we actually had that happen at Santa Barbara City College once, and we just did exactly this. We just said, who's the nominees? Call out your vote. We didn't do a motion. And then one person got 2, one person got 4. And that was it. So I've been a part of it. It's worked.
Dr. Brandt.
Yeah, having thought about it, I'm okay with this being this way because The only time this will apply is if there's more than 2 nominees.
Yeah.
Because if there's only 2 nominees, then there's just a vote,
Yes.
because there's only 2 nominees.
Yeah.
And if there's 1 nominee, then everyone agrees.
Yeah.
If there's 3 nominees, then there probably does need to be a little bit of ordering, and I do think this would help.
Do you want to continue with the test one? So this is the list. There's only one list.
Great.
So list.
So
It's all
Spencer,
right.
you were
Saying
saying what the,
one vote. Let me write all you guys' names.
well, but we added, remember, the paragraph that before we begin the voting process,
We-
we
Yeah.
Explain
but you
where
should
we're
talk
coming
about
from.
where we're coming
Oh,
from.
yeah,
and
I'm
what
just
we-
But
setting it up.
that's what he's doing.
I'm just
Oh.
setting it up.
Should we just start?
Chair decided.
Okay, I'll start us off with some of my comments. So first of all, I want to say I'm really glad that we have this list of ice cream. Particularly, I'm glad that we have 100% dairy options here.
The lemon one is not a dairy.
Okay. Or possibly strawberry.
If it's a sorbet.
It could be a sorbet. These are questions I would like to ask Strawberry more about.
No,
Your
it's the
background?
regular strawberry.
Regular strawberry, okay. So I'll reshare that I'm glad that we were able to welcome one non-dairy competitor to this list. I have a very difficult choice between 2 of my favorites in this list. And that's between coffee and mint chocolate chip. Knowing that coffee of a high quality comes with an extra caffeinated benefit, coffee will have my #1 vote in the list of ice cream flavors, and mint chocolate chip will have my 2nd place vote. Dr. Freeman.
So as somebody who is himself lactose intolerant, I understand the importance of having a non-dairy meal available for people when they show up. You can imagine people show up and feel very excluded from the meal, including, in this case, myself. And so despite the fact that I actually, honestly, don't very much like fruit sorbets, I will be voting for the lemon non-dairy option as my first option. Past that, I've often found that ice creams that have the kind of like a base of something that is either vanilla or chocolate with potential mix-ins is a pretty good brings people it's a least common denominator in some sense of these things, but people do like a little complexity there, and so I'm probably going to go with cookies and cream as my second, and mint chocolate chip as my third.
All right, thank you. Dr. Brandt.
Well, this is a really tough choice because I love all ice cream, dairy and non-dairy. But I thought, thinking about this, that since I've been a young lad, as a little child, cookies and cream has always been something that I've really enjoyed. I would love to have cookies and cream. I think that the ones that really stand out the most to me, though, is got to be mint chip and coffee. I feel that they are both almost equally good, but they really have, mint, my favorite flavor. I drink mint tea all the time. Peppermint is great. It's good for your stomach. And coffee is not that good for your stomach, but it's tasty. And so those are like my 2 favorites there.
Not Raycom.
I think I'd have to go coffee as my #1.
Right.
As someone who has eaten a lot of ice cream in my life, I know exactly which ones I want. Coffee is #1, mint chocolate chip is #2. I guess I don't know exactly which ones I want. I guess I'll go cookies and cream #3.
Yes.
I think in this situation, one cannot just go with a simple choice. And And with that, it has to be number 1, cookies and cream, number 2, coffee, number 3, mint chip.
Damn, general consensus that these three are the good ones. Well, I find myself persuaded by the non-dairy lemon sentiment. And so I think I would have to take that as number 1. And then as number 2 and 3, just based on personal preference, I would go with caramel and mint chocolate chip.
I think the way I read it then is, even though you've discussed it, now you do have to do a
Yes.
separate round of actually saying, here's my first round vote, now that you've heard everybody's points.
Yes.
Yes, for me.
Do you want to use this order or randomize the order, or how do you want to do the order of votes? I don't know if that
That's-
influences the vote.
I guess that's the chair's
Yeah.
decision.
Alphabetical.
Yeah, alphabetical or random, but not in any human selected order.
All right, well, I guess Carrie's first. We'll go first name alphabetical. Lemon, right?
Unless,
You're gonna
yes.
have to vote.
And I'm
first.
just voting for 1 this
For
time.
what?
Lemon.
Yes.
No, you said the
Thank you, lemon.
lemon. Hopefully I remember my ABs. Ella is next.
Cookies and cream.
And Jay,
Lemon.
Mark,
Coffee.
Olivia.
Coffee.
Coffee.
So now what happens is the list is narrowed down to just lemon, coffee, and cookies and cream, right?
So by the way that it's written in the current policy, no. So can
You just relay.
again, if I direct it too much, so can you read the paragraph?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
let's go through what, this is actually a decision, by the way, that we should, that like a place where we can make a modification.
Yeah.
Anything that didn't get a vote should be gone.
Yeah.
So the way that it's currently written is that during each round, only a single nominee is eliminated, and will be the nominee which received the least number of votes. And then if there's a tie for least number of votes, as in the case of 0, it will be
All of
I'm
them.
sorry, I was looking where you're highlighted in order to track
Sorry.
was. It will be broken by the chair at their discretion. And then
Well-
later on, I state that rounds can go very
No,
quickly.
it says the board will vote to
Oh.
eliminate. And
Good
then
point.
if there's a tie.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, good point, yes. So the UK Parliament has a modification which states that the one that has the least number of votes, or any candidate that receives less than 5% of the vote, which in this case, we could just have any candidate that does not receive any votes, is eliminated. And that could be a intuitive modification that people might like.
I like that.
In theory, if all of us put the same second choice candidate, couldn't that candidate theoretically still win? Why would we only take the first choice of everyone the first round? And
Yeah,
not the
I'm-
first 3
I'm
choices?
struggling with that too, because I heard that we had in our top 3, I think 4, maybe 5 people mentioned mint chip.
Yeah.
And so I think that this has actually been a really good exercise, because that seems like a flaw to me. And just so everyone knows, the way that I'm doing this to like keep myself honest is I wrote down a list of the top 3 that I want and the top 3 that I don't, or the bottom 3 that I would not be okay with. To keep myself honest to this,
So
because
as the policy is written, the way it would happen is that we would now take everyone that did not get a vote, because those are all the least ones, and then we would vote for one of them to remove.
That's too slow, I think.
That's pretty slow.
It can be slow, but so
But voting for 2 the first time, that makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
the thought that I was having with this, and actually I wrote it in the policy, try to make it somewhat explicit, is that while that can be slow, it also, even in the case of if we do this 7 times, it shouldn't really take us more than a minute to come to each of the ones. And so specify it a little bit better. Let's say, for example, that we instead of it just saying we vote to remove, like, on who should be the least, what I should have said is that the board can take action to remove and to decide on who the entry of the list is. So we could, for example, like, okay, I move to remove pecan, we take a quick vote, and then we move on to the next step.
can we change the policy so you could say like, we move to remove pecan, banana and vanilla in one go, so you don't have to do like 7 different motions
I
to
think
get
that's
rid of
fine.
the ones that are not up there?
I am comfortable with that personally.
The nice property of this is it does require, in order for that motion to pass, a majority of the people to agree to remove something from the list. And so I think that it's okay to remove multiple. One thing that I feel like I need to say, even though I'm agreeing with it, I feel like I need to say that there was like a paper that was written that said that if you literally only ever remove one and you force yourself to go through all of the rounds, then exhaustive ballot becomes one of those like Condorcet correct voting mechanisms. But it already, the way that I specified it, does not have that property because if a majority of people vote during any of the rounds, it immediately stops. So I am very comfortable adding further modifications, particularly since neither ranked choice voting, nor motion voting, nor plurality voting, nor sequential voting have that property. So I feel the need to say this.
So here's what I'm struggling with, is we had 5 people that mentioned mint, and I just want to make a motion to say, given what we've heard, I nominate mint for the vacancy. You know, and I struggle too with the fact that, you know, while the process wasn't perfect last time, we didn't have to vote to tell each of the people that applied, you're eliminated now, you're thrown off the island. You know, I think that would have been a lot more awkward.
I think when in the case of having like if like there, and so like for what it's worth, 5 maybe that's his, but like if 5 people mentioned it, but it was somebody's third choice. I mean, like it's not as obvious to me that that was the consensus, but maybe it is. Maybe in the case of ice cream, that
I'm
was
not sure that it is. I guess
that was a
we
good
would have to
consensus.
discuss it more.
And whereas like I think that it can get a little more complicated than that. Like I certainly do appreciate that there was like a small core of them that we were kind of hearing people wanting to talk about. But like maybe coffee was going to win. I mean, coffee already has 3 votes. And so if now I don't remember, you know, what like, you know, Carrie's second choice or third choice were, but like if was coffee one of them?
No.
Okay. But like there's like it's not obvious to me what's going to happen. Whereas like by going through these rounds, like it just feels a little more fair to me. But
What I heard from like our board members, and I think is worth like elaborating or looking at more, is that there was a contingent who was interested in mint chocolate chip, but we now have not enumerated. We haven't like quantified that interest. We just heard qualifying interest. And so like this, because there was a lot of qualifying interest, it could be the majority best choice. Even though it was not the majority, like MVP, like #1 thing. And so I think it is something to wrestle with a little bit. I don't know. I can't think of yet like what step could be added in to alleviate some of that interest.
We could have just eliminated anything on the first round when we said our 3 choices didn't get any.
Yeah.
that was like flavor. I'm sorry. So you because of the way that this meeting is being run, where I'm talking a lot, people are looking at me, but I'm not the chair, so that's why. So Ella's hand has been up for a while.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm also like hidden behind.
yeah.
You can see me, but you cannot
Yeah.
see me.
Please share.
I also just, when you're doing the actual math on this, I think mint chocolate chip has more like data or more like votes than lemon does. Because I don't think anybody else mentioned lemon except you 2 as your first. And 6 of us doing it as like a third option is still.
Do you have? I'm actually curious. Specifically, you. Do you prefer coffee to mint chocolate chip, or the other way around?
Coffee.
Then it's okay. So the way that I specified this process, coffee is likely to end up winning.
Right.
And so I want to, and so the question then becomes like, if we actually believe that we really don't like that, I think that's okay. Like, I mean, I actually don't like coffee ice cream. Like, I don't like coffee ice cream. But the fact that coffee was 3 people's first choice, and at least 1 person from the remaining 3 prefers it to mint chocolate chip, I think coffee should win, and that I actually think that it would be like incorrect if we decided the mint chocolate chip should win because 5 people mentioned it. And this is one of the kind of complexities, right? Is that you get into like different voting schemes that are trying to optimize for different theoretical considerations, and it's like if you want to like optimize for the most people think that it would be an acceptable choice, then maybe this is definitely not the voting process you'd use. Whereas if you're looking for like trying to maximize the amount of like utility that various players are getting out of it. I like this one, and again, like despite the fact that like in this example, the thing is, of course, you would say despite the fact that it's not going to work out well for me. It's a theoretical example of like ice cream that I'm not going to get, so it says nothing. But but like I don't like coffee, and coffee should win here. So. And if we continue with the voting process, I think we'll see that if we continue with the process aspect, which we should do.
So what is the next step that we vote to remove everything that didn't get a vote?
Yes, and with the modification, I think where it's like the board takes action to remove entries from the list. And so I will, can we see the list again? I move to remove pecan, banana, and caramel from the list. I don't think there's been many people who really cared about those. Is everyone okay with that? So maybe there's a second.
I would second that motion.
I think we can just pretend the motion went through for this.
Wait, but I'm confused because I thought that you just said that we're gonna remove everything that didn't get a vote.
No, I said that the UK Parliament has that modification. I explicitly did not put that in the policy. The way that I wrote
Okay,
the
no,
policy.
just when I asked you right now, I'm just confused, that's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. The text says that the board will, when there's a tie, as there is currently, the board will vote to decide. And I've clarified that, we should make that an explicit clarification in the text to say that the board will take action to decide. And so, and to take action, you move. And so like I move to remove.
Vanilla, pecan, and banana.
It wasn't vanilla. It was pecan, banana, and caramel. I'm not gonna remove vanilla from the list myself because I think that vanilla is an interesting choice people could remove. And so
That was the original motion, was to remove vanilla.
Did I say vanilla?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's a pecan.
And there's a second chord.
For that.
It's pecan, banana, and caramel.
That was what I intended to move.
Okay, it's
You still
still
second?
good with me. I still
Okay,
second
all right,
that
okay.
motion.
Let's just pretend it passes.
Well,
Aye.
Yeah.
okay. All right. Aye.
Simulation. So this is your list now, so I guess we can put the board member vote
Yeah.
here
And
again.
so I have a paragraph, right, which states that like we can do this quickly. So now you would ask, like, does anyone want to change their vote?
Okay, give me 1 second. Yes, does anybody want to change their vote?
Potentially no.
I'll change my vote.
Oh, okay, there you go. You're allowed to.
I'm
at any time.
gonna go with the coffee crowd.
And I will too.
We're done.
I'm so.
So now it's a clear majority.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Really quick question on the earlier part where you said like the board needs to discuss and say their top 3. Where is that in the text?
Well, we added
We
that,
added
we
that.
workshopped that,
It's
right?
not
We didn't actually, we weren't making the actual.
No, I
edits
know,
to
I know.
the thing,
It was,
but yeah. Spencer brought up that one of the nice things about that meeting was that we got some kind of introspection into the state, like the brain state of the various, voting members. And so the idea was to add back a paragraph which stated that before the voting
Okay.
process begins, each voting member of the board will provide their summary of the candidate pool and I use the word perfunctory ranking of their choices.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a way the list is made. Like if you were on those, if you were mentioned in that round, you're on the list. And if you weren't, you're not on the list. Could be another way to do it.
I just continue to think that the
If you want to have
the list for vacant board seats, we have a policy for it. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I agree with, I think might have been Spencer who brought that up as well, that like
Yeah.
we shouldn't co-opt the existing process that we have for deciding who should be that. For the president, I'm open for whatever. So that's how I would want to do it. That's fine.
So did we have this written to possibly accept this process? or accept this policy today?
No.
Okay, because I didn't want to accept it yet. I want board members to like think about it a little bit, think about like, you know, how this goes, because I think the comments that I heard about Minchip having like at some point a possible majority of interest, even though it was for second place, is kind of an interesting thing to think about. The other side of my mind, it does like feel very strongly though that like it becomes like fair and like clear in step-by-step process if we did it the slower way of removing like only one flavor from the list at a time, which is still possible the way the policy is written. It's just the policy also allows for the removal of more than just one.
What I think was almost more interesting, do you mind if we just do something? If we go back to the list of the voting and we don't have Carrie change her vote. And so if we just leave it back, because it's like, well, nothing got removed that we were actually interested in. Carrie, you know, is okay with the vote that she had. I don't know what the vote she had was. I guess you got an undo button.
It was lemon.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, can you scroll back down? But we still have 4.
And then
Oh, and-
Ella was cookies and cream.
Oh,
Yeah.
cookies and cream. All right, and so we still don't have a majority. And so
Oh,
now the
move
question
that.
is, and so now the decision before us is to remove more of the entries. And so if anyone wants to make a motion, if not, I'll make a motion. But
Give it a try.
I was wondering if other people wanted to
Go
play
for
the
it.
game. All right, okay. So I'm sorry, I need to list it.
I'm making the new list to pick from. This is what you're deleting from right
Oh, I see. I assumed you were just, because we were just scratching, I thought you were just like editing the list in place. And so, okay.
here. This is the round 3 list, so you can delete from this.
I see. So 7. It's the page boundary.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't, okay. And so no one had, can't see the list at the same time as the other.
Here are the votes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the total current list.
Okay. I move to remove chocolate and vanilla from the list.
One second. Shouldn't you try to remove cookies and, no, because it doesn't have 0 votes.
It doesn't have 0 votes. I'm not allowed to. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, now we remove that from the list. Does anyone change their vote? I'm going to ask everyone to not. We go back to the list, and now we are at a we actually have a card question, which is that of the remaining entries that are on the list,
Well, no, because there's still strawberry and
did
mint
I fail?
that have.
Okay. Okay, yes, okay, so I'm gonna say, I move to remove, just to actually force it, strawberries and mint chocolate chip. Maybe somebody seconds that, because there was one other person, I'm the person who mentioned mint chocolate, I'm one of the people who mentioned it, and somebody were to say that, that vote would likely fail, because like people feel like mint chocolate chip is a viable candidate. So then I've moved to remove strawberry.
I'll second that one.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
So now we have this list.
And now we're going to be asking the question again, does anyone want to change their vote? And now everyone knows that if they don't vote for mint chocolate chip, it's going to get removed.
I'll vote for mint chocolate.
See,
chip.
that causes like a thought process to
Here,
occur,
wait,
right?
let me delete your vote so you can maybe see it. I don't know if it matters. but,
Yes, but I understand what you're saying.
So this is your list, because it's a new vote, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what the policy says, is each round is a
Yeah.
brand new vote. So let's not. So this is the new status quo. You're voting out of 4.
Yeah, okay.
Mint chocolate chip.
This carries.
That's
Okay.
me.
And then Ella,
I'm gonna keep mine. I think.
cookies and cream.
I'm going to go with lemon from this list.
I'm gonna vote with coffee.
I'm gonna vote with coffee.
Coffee.
Okay, so now we have to succeed in removing one of the three options that are not, or at least one, of the three options that are not coffee, because each one of them got one vote.
So, okay.
Well, mint, cookies and lemon all got one vote. So yeah.
Yeah, we have to make
Right.
a
So then do
motion.
we move? Yeah.
Yeah, somebody should make a motion on which of those three flavors.
I'll move to get rid of lemon.
Second,
Aye.
aye.
No,
Aye.
motion passes, lemon's removed. No, but I was like,
Yeah, that's how it
it's
would
good to
happen.
see it, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
good to actually see that, like, the fact that I still wanted lemon doesn't matter at this point, because the majority of the board doesn't think that's the, yeah. So,
Wait, let me delete the votes. I mean, you'll have your old vote recorded up there. So let's just do the round of voting. So Carrie, do you want to vote?
Coffee.
Ella.
I guess coffee.
cookies and cream.
Copy.
Coffee.
Copy.
Okay, we got
Yeah.
it.
And so I think my thought is that
Can I
with a
just
little
say-
practice, with a little better wording in the policy, and with good direction, because we've done it and staff knows what we're doing, that this actually wouldn't take all that long, because a lot of it really is just like, okay, I move to remove that, okay, all in favor, aye. Next round, who wants to change their vote? These two people change their vote, okay, that causes this decision on, and like, and it goes relatively, that's my argument, and maybe people disagree, but like, that's.
And so like the question I was asking earlier, which is about like the mint chocolate chip contingent, part of what I see gets resolved. It's only partially resolved through using the process like in a more strict manner of only removing like one per time or continuing the process. Is that as a candidate, mint chocolate chip gets to see themselves make it to the final round. And as a supporter of mint chocolate chip, I get to see mint chocolate chip make it to the final round. And so then I feel like some of my sentiment is carried forward, even though I'm not verbalizing it over and over and over again. So that's what I'm gonna say. It partially resolves that thought for me. I'm still like 85 to 90% very comfortable with this process. And more comfortable with this process than not having a process at all. That was something I repeated at policy committee, was that in general, I think it's really important that we make an appointment process. Doesn't have to be this one, but there should be one that the board agrees to, the public has heard us wrestle with it. And then when it gets used in the future, then at least we've all talked about it. That's my comment.
Well, I hope that we can all like sleep on this, because I think we've kind of talked it to death. We've got an hour and a half and we've got other stuff to do. But I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna be honest, I'm probably less supportive of this after we've done it than when I started. But like I said, I'm gonna think about it more. I really worry about you know, the board's ability, or I don't know if it's a win when we have to start like voting people off the island. I think that's gonna be really hard for people to do. And I think that it's, I don't necessarily know if it serves the process to do that.
Director Freeman.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it was actually nice seeing it play out and actually getting a chance, because I had left it too ambiguously specified how the vote to actually cause the tiebreak would happen, and so doing it forced the actual way of like saying how it would happen, so we could actually do a way of doing it. I appreciate that awkwardness. I guess from my standpoint, I still think that like I found that the motion voting process, because of the ordering occurring from agenda setting, it just felt unfair, and led to this like question of like, well, what if votes occur in different order? And the thing that I like about having a process like this is that I feel that it solves that fairness process. And that's why I was so excited when I saw the UK Parliament said the same thing, that they were trying to find something that gave all the candidates kind of an equal footing coming in, and that was still efficient and transparent. So, and I think that we learned a lot, I think, during this process of modifications to at least make to the policy, whether people end up deciding to go for it or not. So we can, yeah.
Also, I just want to share, because I thought this was hilarious. I wrote down before, my top three, this is before we talked about it at all. My top three were coffee, mint, and cookies, and my three that I didn't want were chocolate, vanilla, and banana. And we got a little bit of a discussion about chocolate and vanilla from you. But then I just thought it was funny that those were the top three.
So
And
quickly,
obviously, if you're making a motion to cut people off the list, it's a time when you could say what lovely qualifications they had and how much you appreciate them
And I think it can feel a little bit better.
applying.
Yeah, I think it can feel a little bit better because if you're removing them as a group, as we were, it's because it's like it's just kind of part of the process. It's just, and so in the case of where it was kind of more contentious, it's like, it's like, you can almost even say like somebody who supports them. Like, I mean, I could see myself for being like, I really want this person to win, but I'm going to move to remove them because I'm not seeing the consensus here on that. We need to move this process forward. So, yeah.
Are there any other further board comments at this time? Is there any public comment on this
Thank God.
policy and test run at this time?
Hopefully no one's not listening to this.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for sitting with us policy committee members and playing this process with us. I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun, and I'm glad that everyone's going to spend some more time thinking on it. And yeah, thank you, everyone. We will now move on to item 4.3, resolution 2421, jury duty policy.
So we talked about it again, and what was put together was 20 days of working time off to serve on a jury. Since almost any other jury, you wouldn't, like, the chances of somebody getting picked for jury and then being picked for a jury that takes more than 20 days are extremely low. And so this should cover 90+% of cases. So that's what the policy committee, and it's up from 10 from the previous draft.
Director Freeman.
I think a very important property of this that was kind of just glossed over here is when this came back to policy committee, at least two, if not all three of us, I can't remember though, but I know it was at least two of us had felt that there needed to be some limit of like, as opposed to having an potentially unlimited liability. And so in some sense, it turned into like a negotiation between of like what the number would be. And the next question is, well, we only chose 10 before because it was the number that was in Jonathan's contract. What is another more objective way of deciding it? And so Jonathan, from the perspective of staff, came back with the idea that we could tolerate losing 1 month of any employee's productivity. And so 1 month of their productivity is 20 working days. And so the 20 was not just chosen arbitrarily here as twice 10. It was chosen as the number from staff that they felt that they could just arbitrarily lose somebody for. Past point, it becomes complicated. And so hopefully then the employee would tell the court when they're being selected, or not being selected, but when they're potentially being selected, they're like, say, I'm going to stop getting paid if I don't have any, and the court will weigh their financial harm, the harm that will come to them over that, and determine later. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it does have I forgot to thank you, Jay. That's
Yeah.
better than what I said. And if you have a longer than 20-day jury, you can get a leave for that. For the length of it, and you could do it paid if you have paid time off available, and it would be unpaid otherwise.
Director Bray.
Well, I really appreciate you workshopping this. I know this is my request to take a second look at it. I think that it seems to me like you guys have struck a really fair balance that meets the concerns that I had. And the only question I have is what's the discrepancy between 20 working days and 480 hours?
Because it's not, you don't go to court for like actually 20 days. You might go to court for 3 hours today, 5 hours tomorrow, not on Fridays. So the court calendar is you're assigned it for your case, like you're told.
So when do you max out? Is it after you've, been to court for 20 working days, even if you only stayed for 2 hours?
No, 20 working days is 480 hours. They're the same thing.
Yeah, they're meant to be the same calculation.
Like a working day is 8 hours.
20 times 8 hours, though, it's not 480. I think it's
That might have
160.
just been my math.
It's just
That's
math.
me.
160. Yeah.
Okay. I always wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Like I said, again, appreciate everyone for working on this, because I do think it's important for our justice system. I know that it's folks that are working that aren't able to have the time to participate in those spaces. And even if it's a really minor case, like some sort of traffic accident related thing, I think that it serves the best interest of the public to allow a diverse group of people to participate.
And I just wondered, are we then expecting that we'll change Jonathan's contract so that it's the same in his contract, or we're gonna leave him out? Because if we say all, doesn't that automatically include him?
It doesn't automatically.
It does not.
Does not automatically include him. I think there was some discussion at policy about maybe we don't want to give that much freedom, not to like our general manager as an employee, like as an individual, but to the court to possibly
Take him.
take our general manager.
Yeah, no, we talked about that at the board meeting. So
And
that's a separate.
That's fair, because
Yeah, it's a sentiment that's worth chewing on, I think. I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah,
And then I'm thinking that we have interns who work variable hours. And so if we don't really even know what their actual schedule is, how would we decide how much of their jury duty we were required to cover?
Yeah, it will be prorated. And maybe I think it had said that in here before. It is going to be prorated. That's how we do all our benefits. And they do have they might not have the same day a week they work, but
they
they're
have the
10
same number
hours.
of
Yeah,
hours,
they're
so
10 hours a
We
week
have
or
an
something.
easy way for that.
Yeah.
And then also,
So cool.
it seems like if, like, say you have a 7.5 hour jury duty day, that I would not think you would expect the person then to try and show up at work. Because, you've got your travel time, you've got everything else. So it just seems like even if the jury day is a little shorter than the work day, that there should be some flexibility around, just the logistics of not being able to, go from one to the next, or is it even make sense to go for 15 minutes?
Yeah, it says excused in writing with the general manager, so they can just text me like, hey, I just got out of court.
And you can say,
Yeah,
you
go
don't
home.
need to come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I mean, I do think that kind of common sense
Yeah.
approach to what the expectation is about how much they work while they're on jury duty.
And we'll add just approve it as amended, and we'll add the note that it's prorated. Even though all our policies say it over and over that all of this is prorated, we'll just say it one
Yeah,
more time here.
it helps to be clear, I
Yeah.
think. Okay,
Dr. Brandt?
I would move to adopt the policy as amended.
Resolutions.
I'll adopt the resolution as amended.
I'll second.
All right, we have the motion by Brandt and the second by Topler. Is there any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, so I will ask for a vote. All those who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 6-0-0-1.
And then this, oh, sorry.
And now we'll move on to item 4.4, resolution 2422, employee missed shifts and scheduling policy.
So this is a pretty straightforward policy. It kind of just puts in place in writing, what's already expected. Like, you're already expected to show up to your shift on time to work, etc. And we do have the authority to enforce that as the employer, but this just makes it clear for the employee what's expected of them, and it can be in our handbook and just clearly laid out. So that's the benefit of approving this as a policy. So, you know, it's just saying people need to show up to their shifts. They have to, you know, attend on time. They have to, you know, if they get a set schedule, they have to stick to it per quarter. They can make up their shifts if they miss it, so they can hit their hours that they signed up to work for. And then we'll evaluate this process quarterly and see if this works for us. But it was meant to be flexible for our student employees, but also, you know, the expectations of the job and what needs to be done need to be met as well. So we tried to have a balance between those two things in this policy. And a lot of our, you know, it came up as just, we had a couple issues over the last couple of years of, you know, this not happening the way we'd like it to. So just giving the program managers, like, you know, the backup they need to tell their employees, hey, it's our employee policies, you've got to do it like this. So it's not different than what we've done before, is what I'm trying to say, essentially.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Is there any public comment on this particular resolution? See none. Is there any further board discussion or action on this resolution?
I'll move to approve.
I will second.
All right, we have the motion by Topliff and the second by Brandt. Is there any public comment on this motion? I see none, so I will ask for a vote. All those who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 6-0-0-1. And now we'll move on to reports from members of the board. Are there any reports from members of the board? Director Brandt?
I had the pleasure of attending the ribbon cutting for the vending machine, and I thought staff did a great job with it. So thank you for all your work on that. We got some great press coverage and valuable resources.
Anyone else? No. Good. Director Freeman.
This coming Monday is the Santa Barbara local chapter of the California Special Districts Association chapter meeting. And will be at the Goleta Frog Bar and Grill. And I think there's probably still time to RSVP to that.
I don't see how it's my calendar for yesterday.
There was a mistake in the date. And there might have been a thing that went out saying that,
Yeah.
because there was then later an email which said that it was that there was a correction because it's the fourth Monday of the month. And so it is next week on Monday at the Frog Bar and Grill, if anyone wanted to go to that.
All right, thank you. Are there reports from standing and ad hoc committees?
No, but I want to go back to the previous thing.
Yes, you're allowed to go.
At the this last week, I spent a few days with Shane Stark at the particularly with Shane Stark because I drove up there with him, but with a few other people at the Cal LAFCO conference. And I actually I'm not the person who noticed this. Somebody, Jonathan, noticed this, but one of the things that was in the materials for it was a reference to AB3 as because there was an entire sheet of like litigation that has gone around LAFCO in various ways. And that, but I never succeeded in figuring out if there was actually a discussion of that there. But it was interesting that AB3 was still being brought up as something that was like relevant to the discussion of like the meaning of LAFCO and things like that. I did get an opportunity to discuss those kinds of boundaries with various people at the event. Generally, people that were positive of the work we've done. So.
Did you see Jared? I had told the person to look out for you.
I did not. I did see apparently, there's a friend of mine, in another different direction, who's the council for, why am I thinking, is there a YOLO County? That doesn't make any
There's a
sense.
YOLO.
There's a
There's a YOLO County.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that report. I'll ask again, are there any reports from standing and ad hoc committees? I see none. Is there a report from our district council?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Thank you. And report from our general manager and staff.
Yeah, I think a lot of the last 2 weeks have been focused on a parking study, going out and talking to a lot of different people about that. And our reorganization in the staff and implementing that was approved at the last meeting. And that's been going really well, but me and Jenna have had a couple meetings about that. And we had our vending machine launch and IV Safe. So it's been only a limited amount of things that have been focused on in the last 2 weeks, but they've all been really important and have big deals. And we have some HR issues we've been working on as well, so.
And we had our monthly meeting with
We
IVRPD
did.
today.
Yeah.
And talked about asking for a presentation from the county about all of the builder's remedy projects and the other big building
Mhm.
projects that are about to hit Isla Vista. And we also talked about
Yeah, we talked about
our gate and our shared parking lot over here, which
Yeah.
is kind of stalled in terms of moving forward, that we each have our to-do lists about what needs to happen, because that's holding up our wave transportation system right now.
Mhm.
So it's pretty important that we get that online again.
Brent?
With the gate, I understand this has been a challenge, and maybe we should agendize it for future discussion, because can we just leave the gate open and solve the problem?
and then no one's gonna enforce the parking. So if people start storing their cars in there, we're kind of stuck with those cars being in there.
Okay, I
But
understand
technically,
that.
but no one's been using it when it has been left open. It hasn't been used that much, but
But we have control of how many parking spaces?
3.
Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. But I'm very frustrated by the situation, because I've been hearing, just the updates periodically from you both, and it seems like we're spending an incredible amount of money to try to solve a problem that is not our problem. And that is frustrating to me, because it is now delaying a very important public transportation improvement in the community, at a time when we have a mobility plan that shows that the biggest concern people have is their ability to get over to that area of town. So I'll get off my soapbox, but we'll leave it at the discretion of the chair. But I almost wish that we had a discussion on the agenda to try to have a joint meeting to try to solve this problem.
I hear those comments. Those are very useful comments. Yeah, me and Carrie's, leadership, we can think about different ways to try to bring that conversation forward. Yeah. Right.
And I had a question for staff. For people that communicate with us that share their feedback, who should I email that to on the parking mobility? You?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep, I'm saving all it. Yeah, emails, all the things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. So excellent questions. With no further reports to share, we can move into closed session. Council, could you please read us into closed session?
Yes, thank you. The board will meet in closed session on 2 items. Item 6.1, public employee discipline dismissal release pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1. And item 6.2, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Sections 54954.5C, 54956.9D1. Case name 23 Serrano Properties et al. Versus the State of California. Case number Los Angeles County Superior Court. Case number 24 STCV 01214.
Thank you.
Okay, let me put the YouTube. I think we're good. Jay?
Make sure it's on the screen. There we go. Yes, we're good.
Okay, we are back at 8:09 PM. Council, could you please read us out of closed session?
Yes, thank you. The board met on two items. Item 6.1, public employee discipline dismissal release pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1. Discussion was had, no reportable action taken. The board met on item 6.2, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Sections 54954.5C and 54956.9D1 regarding 238 Serrano Properties LLC versus the State of California, case number LA County Superior Court, case number 24 STCV 01214. Discussion was had, no reportable action taken.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to our future meeting dates and future agenda items. The next regular meeting of the Board of Directors will take place on November 12th, 2024 at 6 PM on Zoom and at the community room, 970 Embarcadero Del Mar, Isla Vista, California. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
And the meeting.
Oh, yeah. I'm never gonna remember that.
Good night, everyone.